It's a sweltering summer day in 2011, and Angela Davis stands before a packed crowd at a university auditorium, her voice calm but fierce. She asks a simple yet seismic question: what if prisons no longer existed? The room holds its breath, because abolishing prisons doesn't just sound radical, it sounds impossible. But Davis insists the prison system is breaking, crumbling under its own weight. Will we see this change in our lifetimes? That's where her story grabs you and where we need to dive in. Prisons didn't just appear overnight. To understand their hold, Davis rewinds the tape to slavery and segregation and the myths we tell ourselves about inevitability. Davis draws us to the post-Civil War South, where convict leasing replaced slavery, hundreds of thousands of black prisoners leased like property to plantations and industries. This system kept racial subjugation alive under a new name, showing how incarceration was always tied to economic exploitation and racist control. Think of prisons like medieval castles turned money factories. The deeper you look, the clearer it gets. Prisons aren't just for punishment, they're lucrative businesses. Huge corporations cash in on the incarcerated through cheap labor, surveillance tech, and services, turning human suffering into shareholder profits. We've seen impossible fights won before. Davis reminds us, the abolition of slavery, the dismantling of Jim Crow, both seemed unthinkable until mass movements shifted political tides. These victories light the path for prison abolition, proving entrenched systems can topple when enough people demand justice. Prisons lock up more than bodies, they fracture communities and steal futures. Davis paints a picture you can't ignore: the social, political, and human toll that keeps the cycle churning. In places like Ferguson, Missouri, communities of color face police disproportionately targeting them, feeding the prison pipeline. Davis exposes how millions behind bars are also stripped of voting rights, silencing entire demographics and skewing democracy itself. Imagine families ripped apart, children raised without parents, neighborhoods hollowed out. Davis shares stories of prisoners' loved ones left to pick up shattered pieces, moments where incarceration isn't just punishment but intergenerational trauma, erasing trust and hope from communities. Prisons don't equal justice, they embed inequality deeper. Davis describes how the system funnels the poor and marginalized into endless cycles of debt, probation, and imprisonment. The prison becomes a revolving door, locking people out of education, housing, and jobs, trapping them in poverty's grip. What if we choose differently? Davis isn't just tearing down prisons, she's building a vision for a society that heals before it harms. Davis urges us to dismantle the vast prison industrial network, closing facilities, ending mass incarceration, and stopping the profit flows. She points to decarceration efforts in places like California, where reducing prison populations led to safer communities and more humane treatment overall. Punishment alone never fixes harm. Davis calls for new terrains of justice, alternatives rooted in healing, restoration, and accountability. She highlights restorative justice circles that bring victims and offenders together, sparking understanding and real closure without bars or cages. Reform tinkers at the edges, transformation overturns the whole system. Davis insists we address root causes: poverty, racism, education, and health care. If we rebuild society on equity and care, there'd be no need for prisons. And that's a future worth fighting for, not waiting for. Remember that crowd in the auditorium hanging on to Davis's question about a prison-free world? Now you see why that question isn't fantasy, it's a challenge rooted in history, economics, and justice. The prison system isn't broken beyond repair, it's built to be broken. Your takeaway: start asking new questions about justice in your community. Push for spaces where healing replaces punishment, because abolition isn't absence, it's the presence of something radically better. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.